If you grew up at any point where magazines were still popular, chances are you've seen this ad, or even this ad. For decades, companies have been attempting to shill their super weird products to any and all kids of that generation that will buy it. Some would gain questionable widespread fame, but they're almost always bullshit. However, while watching an old Cinemassacre video, one ad in particular caught my eye.
And a live monkey. Yeah. Never today would you see something like this.
This got me thinking, who the fuck was sending live monkeys through the mail, and did anybody actually buy them? So we are going to look at the potential origins of these ads. These are the ads of the mail-in squirrel monkeys from the 60s and 70s. Who the hell thought sending live monkeys through the mail was a good idea? I'm gonna be real with you guys, I fucking love monkeys, so giving me any excuse to talk about them is pretty fucking awesome. That still doesn't mean sending them through the mail was a good idea though. I guess I should explain what these ads are if you by chance have never seen them. In the 60s and 70s, specifically for this video, various comic book and shock magazines would sell ad space to would-be entrepreneurs or basically anybody trying to make a buck. Think of ads that you see on like the sides and the tops of various websites and you more or less got the right idea. They would literally try to sell you anything. Sea monkeys were one of the more popular items for sale, as well as X-ray specs that stated they were not a toy and were a legitimate optical instrument. Shout out to OKI's Weird Stories because he did an excellent video on Count Dante, I think a few years ago. In it, he goes over the various ads that were placed in the back of different Marvel comics, where Count Dante would try to sell this book to you called Dim Mak, which translates to like the Death's Touch. And like the X-ray specs, Dim Mak was also bullshit. Almost nothing seemed to be off limits with these ads as well. So where do the monkeys fit into the story? If you were an avid reader of Marvel Comics or any of the different Warren magazines at the time, alongside your trusty copy of Dim Mak and X-ray specs, you would also find ad space for companies selling live squirrel monkeys. And they made sure to specify that they were alive. That seems like a weird thing to specify. The ads themselves were pretty self-explanatory. If you were a person in the late 60s and early 70s with a home address and about 20 bucks to spare, and an unspecified delivery amount, you too could have your own monkey sidekick. And that's all it took to get your own little buddy monkey in the mail. And no, there's not a whole lot of checks and balances with that. To be fair, this was in the 60s and 70s, so regulation, especially by mail, was a lot more lax than it is today. When looking up the validity of these ads and monkey stories in general, don't worry, I am touching on the stories a bit later. A Redditor by the name of The Colbin with capital T, capital K commented that probably because he spent time in a medical/experiment lab before being sold as a pet. This was in context to how the monkeys acted after being received as pets. And while I couldn't find any documentation containing squirrel monkey labs during the 60s or the 70s, I was able to find some medical grant information that discussed squirrel monkey tests in the 80s with some experiments happening very recently. I guess after everyone realized squirrel monkeys just bathed in their own urine, they decided to just fucking get rid of the things. I'm not kidding either, that's like actually a fact. They do bathe in their own urine. I also just realized we talk a lot about golden showers on this channel. And I'm not gonna lie, when I first started looking this subject up, I honestly thought it was all bullshit. I couldn't fucking fathom the idea that someone would order a monkey so casually back in the 60s and 70s. I had it in my head that because this was 50 years ago, that in the process of time, people just made up all these fantastical stories about it, and it was clearly all just a giant work of fiction. But now I'm not so sure. Obviously the ads are real, but my logic was that people on the internet probably just saw these and decided to make a story about them. It's the internet, and no one really needs to prove anything. Like the X-ray goggle scam or the paper submarine, the monkeys clearly had to be like a toy monkey or something, right? Well, according to a report by the British source entitled The Lancet conducted on January 1st, 2007 between 1968 and 1972, about 173,000 squirrel monkeys were imported to the US alone. That's a lot of fucking monkeys. There was also an interview conducted with a woman named Flo Steinberg, better known as the Fabulous Flo, who confirmed the ads were legitimate with real sales. As I recall, I know we got a certain amount of money in the office, and then we would send a notice to the monkey people with payment, whatever they charge, and then they would take care of shipping it. Flo Steinberg also wasn't just some random person I just happened to dig up on the internet. No. She was actually a pretty big figurehead in both the comic world and advertisement world. So much so, Stan Lee even gave her cameo appearances in his comic books under the moniker Fabulous Flo. At the time of the Monkey ads, Flo Steinberg was the manager of the James Warren Capital Company. On some of the Monkey ads, you can clearly see the James Warren Capital Company name at the bottom. So people were actually buying fucking monkeys back in the 60s and 70s. So who the hell was the James Warren's Capital Company, and who the hell were the handlers of the monkeys? From my research, the James Warren Capital Company acted as a middleman to various distributors for a lot of these wacky products for sale. Oftentimes, they would be the ones who would place the ads in Marvel Comics for stuff like the X-Ray Specs and Sea Monkeys. So quick tangent, when I was looking up the James Warren Capital Company, I also was looking up the creator of the Sea Monkeys, because when you look up the creator of the Sea Monkeys, under his name, there's a question that pops up that says, who created monkeys? So, obviously I was like, well, who created monkeys? I click on it and it said fucking Harold von Braunhout, the creator of Sea Monkeys. So I took the same question, I popped it into Google, and I just typed in who created monkeys, and of course the evolutionary tree brought up. I know this has really nothing to do with anything. It's just one of those stupid Google moments that happens, and if you've been on the internet, you know those stupid Google moments.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
The creator of the Sea Monkeys, Harold von Braunhout, a controversial figure who should get his own video in the future, also was linked to selling the Squirrel Monkeys. However, no concrete information that this is true has ever surfaced. In fact, the original handlers of the Squirrel Monkeys are all but unknown at this point. I do have a theory though. On a few of the other ads, there was another group called Animal Farm that was based out of Miami that was also selling squirrel monkeys through ads at the time. It's possible the group importing the monkeys decided to skip the middleman and sell them directly themselves, as this would save them a lot of money. The name Animal Farm could also be just another LLC to the James Warren Company. So I don't actually have any evidence for this particular theory of mine, and there don't exist any dates as to when these ads were published, at least available online that I was able to find. So until some new information pops up regarding this, the handlers of the actual monkeys pretty much will remain a mystery at this point. It's also possible there was no main distributor for monkey sales. It's possible independent entrepreneurs discovered an investment opportunity similar to the gold rush of 1848 or Bitcoin boom of 2017. It was probably like the 60s or 70s version of Tiger King minus the drugs. These were millionaires in the 60s and the 70s. They were on fucking drugs. While researching the topic, one question continuously popped into my head. Where are all the pictures of people with these fucking monkeys? See, and this is why I initially thought the whole thing was just a giant hoax, because if I got my own little buddy sidekick monkey, you bet your ass one of the first things I would do is take a picture, at least one picture with the damn thing. And that's not to say none exist, I just haven't found any. Until those surface, all we have are the often humorous and ridiculous stories of kids who happened to buy one back when. I sifted through a lot of various stories regarding buying a squirrel monkey, and I'm gonna be honest with you, a lot of them follow similar beats. The kids would buy the monkey without telling the parents, monkey would get loose, hijinks would ensue. Someone gets attacked and bitten, monkey masturbates in front of someone, urinates all over the place before escaping off into the night. A lot of these stories seem to also take place in New York. So if all of these stories are true, there must have been an epidemic of deranged, scared primates running through New York with all these escaped monkeys running around. I did find a couple of stories that seem legit, but again, this is the internet, so Pixar, it didn't happen. I won't be telling the whole story, but I have it linked below if you want to read the whole thing. This story comes from a CBR article about a man named Joe Schwind and his former roommate in 1969 as they came upon a man who was harboring one of these squirrel monkeys in a birdcage. After discovering this monkey was living in filth, they decided that it would be best if they take the monkey themselves. They weren't entirely sure where the monkey came from, but assumed it came from one of the Squirrel Monkey ads. After taking him home and letting him getting a feel for his new environment, the two roommates decided to name him Stanley. And of course, some hijinks ensue, but what makes me believe this story above some of the other ones is that it's surprisingly logical in its storytelling. Stanley did take some time to adjust, but eventually learned how to cope living with his new roommates. The biggest trouble they ever seemed to have was that he seemed to dislike redheads.
Oh, sick! Gross!
Over time, Stanley would fall in and out of Joe's life, as his other roommate was the primary caretaker. The last time Joe ever saw Stanley was when Stanley was roughly 18 years old. If this story's fake, it's a damn good one because there's not many of the extra stuff that a lot of these 60s I bought a Squirrel Monkey stories have. It doesn't have the extra grandiose or riveting plot detail or plot points that happen, and I think that's what makes this so believable. Without any photographical evidence, I'm still a bit skeptical, but I do believe at the very least someone had purchased a monkey in the past. After 1972, the Squirrel Monkey ads seemed to fall off the radar. Why did these ads stop appearing in these magazines? I can find two reasons that are semi-linked together, and that's SARS/AIDS and government regulations. It's estimated that 60% of all squirrel monkeys carry some sort of disease, namely SARS, which had its first major research done in 1970. Why does SARS sound so familiar? Oh right, it's just a form of COVID.
You trying to kill us?
Then there is also the AIDS scare/epidemic that happened, which in fairness didn't actually begin until the 80s. However, the first known case brought into the US was from a Haitian man in 1969. Now, I'm not saying that this particular person received AIDS from sleeping with a squirrel monkey. However, it was theorized that by a human being sleeping with a monkey is how AIDS was contracted in the first place. However, do the math. 173,000 squirrel monkeys alone were imported to the US at the peak of their popularity. Someone fucked a monkey. And let's be honest here, not all the buyers were children, and they most certainly were not all saints.
But that's not right!
Compound that with the fact that 60% of all squirrel monkeys carry some sort of fucking disease, and yeah, you're looking at a recipe for disaster. The other reason was government regulation, as in 1973 the ESA was signed into law by President Nixon, which on top of protecting potentially extinct animals, also barred importation of exotic animals without permits. Basically, in one fell swoop, they killed the entire market for monkey buyers. Today, most states have very strict rules in regard to exotic pets, requiring permits in order to have one. However, there are 3 states that currently do not require permits. They are Alabama, not surprised, Nevada, definitely not surprised, and North Carolina. A little surprised. All of these do not require permits. However, North Carolina's government has the decision pushed down to the city level. If you want to find out more about what is or not allowed in your state, I have a few articles linked below that could help. So my thought process, and against my better judgment I suppose, is that if you were a monkey peddler post 1973, then the long dick of the law would most certainly be looking for you, and they were looking for a good time. So all's well that ends well, I suppose. It's interesting to look back on such a weird time in US history and see what type of things people were buying. Look, I'm not even gonna pretend. If I was alive back then, had the $20, you bet your ass I would have bought my own little sidekick monkey at the first opportunity that I had. And then had to suffer the consequences later because squirrel monkeys aren't really domesticated animals that like to pee on themselves and masturbate vigorously in front of you. They like to attack redheads, have a habit of biting up and down your arm because they're scared, and really shouldn't be in a regular household. Fuck it, hindsight would have been 2020, I guess. Anyway, thanks for watching. Alrighty, thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, you probably know what I'm about to get at, but I wanted to give a quick shout out to, once again, Jammin' Sam Miller. He actually provided the music that you're hearing right now, and I do think he is one of the best musical artists that are on YouTube right now. So I do have his channel link in the description below, and if you're not subscribed, definitely get over there and check out his different music. He does a lot of remasters, which I also put in this video from Donkey Kong Country. Just overall great guy, highly recommend him. Alright, so I'm just gonna keep this brief. Monkey peddlers, huh? So after watching that episode of Cinemassacre, that was the first thing that popped into my head, and from there I'm like, well, you know, I think I know what I'm doing a video on now. And so the next episode I do got coming is the Halloween Spooktacular, little Halloween special I got planned. So it's definitely a doozy, so look forward to that. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I genuinely appreciate it. Keep things light and rebellious, and I will catch you all in the next one.